This is the 91 Eagle Summit. It's been in New England its whole life. Dalby's is the dealership it was bought at. I've already put in the harness for the 4G61 and the AM standalone, which is which is in there. Let me turn on the light. How do I turn on the light? There we go. There's the AM, so I can tune it. And when I'm done, I just push that back in, and nobody knows. For the fuel system, I made a fuel cell out of aluminum. And I built this metal housing so that the carpet goes in when it's done and you won't even know it's there. I did hitch up the tank to the factory filler with a rollover valve through the inside of the car, so I can put gas in it through the factory door. And now I'll pick it up. What I did was I took the Eagle Summit hubs, spindles, and I pulled the hubs out of an Eclipse, and I had them machined so that they fit inside of the bearings. So it's the Eagle spindles with the hubs from an Eclipse, so I have the 5-lug. And then I put on the brakes from an Eclipse. On the rear. They won't fit on the front because in the front, when I put on the twin piston calipers, they hit the rims. So these are factory twin piston Brembos or Akibonos for a turbo Eclipse all-wheel drive. The bolts lined up. I put studs in and just a few washers because the spacing was different. But these are the vented rotors from that same car. I ran all new brake lines in Copro nickel. This is the mount I made to hold the carrier bearing for the back half of the drive shaft. I used the factory bolts that actually had held up the tank strap, and then I bracketed it up through the car also. And I have a round piece to go over the bottom. I had this part of the shaft shortened so that the carrier bearing was behind the floor piece. And then I had the drive shaft made so that the second bearing is going to end up right where the converter mounts were on the car. And that's where I'm going to make the second mount, just like in the rear. These are the fuel lines that I ran. And these are, once again, Copro nickel. I ran a 1/2-inch fuel line right up, catching a bolt right up behind the rack. This is the 1/2-inch feed line that's going to go up and connect up, and this is the 3/8 return line that goes up to my fuel pressure regulator, which is right there, and that's going to be return. Following the fuel lines back, this is the Aeromotive 10 micron filter. I attached all the lines at the factory spots. was I used a braided flexible section from refrigeration. They're rated at about 300 psi, constant running pressure and extremes in temperature, to my Aeromotive A1000. This is the return, this is the line that comes off of my rollover vent, which I put at the very top of the filler neck, through the car, back down through an aluminum 1/2 inch. This is the fuel cell. Let me try to get on a different angle so that the sun isn't quite so... Anyways, there's the fuel cell. And the fuel line's going to come from here, and it's going to go right over to the pump, which is right up in here, side of the quarter. And the return line is here, and that goes up and over and back down the edge of the frame rail. For the mounting of the rear end, I'm doing a night shot again. I made all factory brackets, factory looking brackets I should say, welded them up and painted them, and I did encase it. I was afraid of the strength of the bolt chucking back and forth, so I encased the whole mount like I would assume it was on the factory car. From the outside of the car, that's what they look like. I'll go to the other side so you can see it. There we go. So that's what it looks like from outside the car, looking in from the side. For the mustache bar, I just welded in square tubing, and then I welded a nut inside of it, and I use this as a spacer so I can set the angle, the pinion angle. And that's also what I use to mount the tank in with, the straps for the tank. For the shocks, I used Eclipse AGX's adjustable, and I just cut the factory strut mount, lowered it, and then boxed it back in. This is a better shot of what the mount looks like. There's the mount for the drive shaft and the second mount. Well, that's pretty much where I am right now. I'm going to put in a second pre-filter in front of between the pump and the tank in case there's any bits in the tank, since I did make it. For the motor mounts, I cut the factory mount off of the bar. I welded it to this plate and drilled it and tapped it, so this mounts up right to here. And then for the rear mount, I took a piece of 3/16 or no, quarter, and I drilled it, bent it up. And there is just clearance between the bar and the mount. Not much, but there is a tiny bit, and as the suspension goes, the bar drops down. I bent it around. With Prothane mounts, I welded the mount on here, and then I carried this over and I made U-clamps and went over top of the bolts that holds the rack in, since this is that whole piece of metal which is tied in and has strength. And I just welded this over, and this is my rear mount. And that's pretty much where I am right now. I'm getting ready to put the motor in today, hopefully, and have maybe an update with pictures or whatever in just a little bit.